Welcome back to the French Rugby Podcast with me, Tim Groves, former France hooker Benjamin Kaiser, and an absolutely beaming former Scotland international, Johnnie Beattie, who actually, Johnny, turned up an hour early for the podcast today. You were that excited, weren't you?
So keen. No, but what a weekend, like especially for me, my two passions. So Scottish rugby, absolutely flying, French rugby as well, smoking Italy. So look, my phone has been buzzing nonstop with people excited about the two teams, about predictions that we made last week coming true, which a lot of people didn't think would happen. And look, it's just great for the tournament as well. It's great to see France back where they are, and it is always good to see Scotland beating England. So an amazing weekend of rugby, and I absolutely loved it, 100%.
Okay. We will be talking all things France later on in the show, but it does feel a little bit like the Scottish Rugby Podcast this week. So we'll let Johnny and we'll get our guest on, and we'll let them all loose in a bit. But Benji, first of all, how was your week?
Right, mine was good. I was just a bit gutted, a bit livid to be stuck in England, not being able to go and do some commentary. So I was meant to do the England-Scotland game, for French TV. But had at least it gave me time to watch it. And honestly, every time you think Six Nations can change, the private equity investments are going to come in, promotion, relegation. No crowds, whatever it is, there's something mythical and special about this tournament. It's just, I think it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it wasn't New Zealand, South Africa that played in Twickenham in Saturday. There wasn't anybody in the stands, but it's phenomenal to see how deeply in everybody's souls and hearts this tournament sort of makes our heart beat. For French TV, I was asked to do a tiny little video about like the press, the Saturday morning press, what's in England. There was absolutely nothing about France. It was Calcutta Cup. You can't really explain it, right? It's just this. Well, it's the world's second oldest sporting trophy, I think, in history. There's like what's it called, that sailing trophy that's Cup. Basically America's Cup, exactly. That's oldest, but apart from that, it isn't. And actually, from living here now, I get what it is. Everybody hates Scotland, right? Everybody hates England. Sorry, everybody hates England, but I mean everybody. But it's almost a national sport to hate them. It's that gentle rivalry that you want to do before halftime and after everybody has beers. I have a feeling, and you tell me, Johnny, I have a feeling that the rivalry between England and Scotland is a little bit more than just before halftime and after let's have beers. It's a little bit more into, I resisted not to chuck their, to rip their throats out. I resisted to literally not eat you alive. There's this thing about the Scots are absolutely desperate about eating England, and that was a proper display of heart, soul, passion. So I was chuffed. Honestly, I was chuffed to see a big set of balls and a huge heart winning a game more than anything.
Before we get into the game, sitting on the couch and watching, I was the exact same. So I was meant to be doing commentary as well. It got cancelled. I'm sat watching it on the couch with a beer. Did it make you miss playing, or were you happy to be watching? That was because that's the first time that I've watched Scotland and been genuinely 100% delighted. Before, I've always felt that I could have been playing or could have been involved, or I still was fit enough. But that was just 100%. It was a pleasure for me to sit in front of the TV and watch that game unfold. And the manner in which it unfolded, I absolutely loved it. But for you watching games this weekend, was there any kind of still want to be there, still want to play, or were you absolutely loving just watching and absorbing the games?
No, honestly, I was chuffed to see those games. I was chuffed to see France finally deliver in a consistent way. I was chuffed to see a big old game still against Wales and Ireland. Not the best game of the weekend, but still. No. So the only thing that makes me prevent from wanting to be there is the lack of crowds, which does impact a lot. But no, I was just. It's one of those things that the weeks are particularly repetitive, right? The days are pretty repetitive. I don't know what a Sunday is. Is it a time where you don't have to wake up and take your kids to school? What's school? I don't even know what that is anymore. So basically, it's hugely repetitive. But bloody hell, this international rugby is just it's got something special.
It's amazing.
And so whenever people think, this rugby is going the wrong way and it's getting a little bit boring and this and that, then it makes me feel a lot better to see those things. So I didn't think about myself, to be honest. I more thought about the general state of rugby. And because to be honest, Autumn Nations Cup was a bit soulless, was a bit I didn't know what this thing was. I was just happy to see sports basically and to be there, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it meant. Just look at the reaction of England players when they win it. They went, hey, and then left. So that's what it means. But look at the reaction of the Scots when they won. There was no way. They were absolutely chuffed. And on a side note, I thought it was absolute class from Hogg to let the young fellas lift the trophy. I think it sums up, the perfect sort of day. That's how sport needs to be done. And don't get me started about England, but I will in a bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Let's get our guest on now. He can join in the conversation. He'll have plenty to add to this. And well, Johnny's been in charge this week, hasn't he? He's brought another Scot along. We're talking about the Calcutta Cup, so you can tell he's in charge of the show this week. Scotland's most capped back rower, Jason White, joins us. How are you, Jason?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good to see you guys.
We are here to talk about France and other things as well, all things Six Nations. But it's been a long, long wait. We were just discussing it for Scotland to beat England at Twickenham. So where were you for the big moment?
Yeah, I was at home watching it with my, we just mentioned there, I'm proud father to 4 young girls, and I managed to have everybody else in a separate room in the house, and I managed to sit down with my dog, Fox Ready, Gilly. So I had Gilly beside me on a big sort of bean bag. So I sat down there, crisp, couple of beers, and what a great afternoon of sport it was for a Scotsman on Saturday.
Idyllic, absolutely idyllic. We were talking a bit before about England and what went wrong with them. For me, it kind of started with the Autumn Nations Cup, how they kind of almost got beaten in the final by effectively a B/C team from France. It seemed that people had sort of figured out their game plan a little bit, and they came a little bit unstuck. You then lay into that no home support, a coach who's in isolation, players out, not fit, not match fit, Saracens players completely way off the mark. That's the English side, but what did you make more of the Scottish performance? I know you're a proud Scot, obviously former captain. You know Gregor very well, the coach. What did you make of the Scottish performance?
Yeah, I think whenever my experience went to Twickenham at all, and any game of rugby, you've got to match whatever's coming at you in the forward pack. And I think the great thing the Scottish 8 did on the weekend, minimum, the coach is always going to say, at least get parity or try and get dominance. And I think you can pretty much, everyone would recognise that the Scottish 8's got the better of the English 8's, which allowed the Scottish backs to do their stuff and come through. And my experience and to be honest, probably the hidings that I took when I was at Twickenham, and that's because we just couldn't front up in the forward pack. We could maybe touch on a little bit towards parity, but never just get on top of them. And I think that was the key thing for me in the weekend, was the way the Scottish forwards performed.
You're talking about the performance of the 8 and stuff, but listen, you were a bone crusher of your own, okay? So you put a lot of importance into chopping people in half, and I basically, that if you're going to go and challenge, you're talking about the front 8, yes, well, the collective effort, but there's also back row that I think are very, very impressive for Scottish. I love this little Tasmanian devil that is, Amish Watson. She's so entertaining. He's got this big smile on his face, and he just goes from task to task non-stop, and he just gives his absolute best and his heart in his thing. And the symbolic is that he ripped the last ball, right, and then kicked it out, and I was just for him. And I'm sure that's something that's important to you. But another question, I was absolutely delighted to see, you want to finish a perfect day needs to be finished with class, right? And like you mentioned, you were on your own with your dog, couple of beers. You probably, the sun was setting or something in your beautiful home or something. It must have been something amazing. But then you see Hogg basically asking the 2 young fellas to lift the trophy for him. I think that was that final little touch that I think, that's the differentiator between class. Because to go back to Johnny, what you said, Autumn Nations Cup, I was in Twickenham when they should have lost to France, the C team of France, who played with all their heart and passion and stuff. A.D. Jones comes out after the game. He's looking at the cameras and stuff, and he's like, "No, mate, the only reason why it took us a little bit more time to win than normally, not that we should have lost or something. The reason why it took us a little bit more time to win is because we were 2% off our performance. And I can't accept that this is a B team. We've collected a lot of data on them. They're actually better than the starters." So I'm like, what a bloody tool. This guy has got zero class about him. To actually, in rugby, you always like when you get a fair challenge, you want the guy, like a bit like in tennis. They spend 10 minutes when it's a good final praising the guy who lost, right? You just want to say, listen, we did well. We did as much as we could, but we got seriously challenged by a young set of boys. Fair play to them. We could have lost, we could have won. It's on for us, you know. And then that's from then, where in terms of leadership, they did not change at all, and they've been going nowhere. Whereas, which is my question to you, did you like what Hogg did, which was at the end? He didn't finish just on a flat note. He finished on an absolute high of letting those young fellas.
It was outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. And probably the protocol around it has normally happened, because normally the full-time whistle goes and the captain goes up the tribune. They got the stands and they're presented by the cup, and that was all changed with the restrictions with COVID. So it probably didn't sink into me right at the time, because I was fortunate that I'd lifted the cup as captain back in 06. But for him to give it to the two first caps, like what a great feeling of being the guy for the team to do that. And Hoggy's had, like, his journey's not been straightforward as the captain. He's had a couple of tough times himself. And captain from fullback, I don't think is the natural position. So the way that he handles himself in the press, I think he's been outstanding. And it's not normal. Like the natural Scottish persona and probably psychology is really hard on themselves. And I think we've seen the Hoggy coming through with Finn Russell. We've got guys who they believe in themselves, and I think there's lots of different layers to why they're believing in themselves, but they're spreading it through. And we've got young guys who are now coming through. Cam Redpath for his first cap, and like, how amazing is that for him for his first cap to beat England. It's like amazing. And we've got Finn, who's doing so well in France, and he is just not your typical Scotsman at all, because normally the Scotsman, the fly half would be steady, he'd maybe be strong in one facet of the game but not the other, and he would make a mistake and he'd flip himself in the back. But Finn can just let it go.
He can make 1,000 mistakes and he'll still laugh about it and then try it again to make another 1,000. That's for sure.
He's good enough. That's the thing. But and people would say, like, a press also said, look, Finn maybe didn't have his best game, but he's ultimately your one wonder kid. He's probably, him and Hoggy are the two guys you look to, but ultimately in that game, you mentioned Cam Redpath, Hamish Watson, Jamie Ritchie, Xander Fagerson, Matt Fagerson, who's getting his first run in a while. Like, from 1 to 23, they were outstanding. So it didn't need to be that Finn had to stand up and be the one man to lead everything and charge everything and be a magician. The game plan and the execution and the desire and the coherence with that team compared to England on the other side of the field was on another level. So you didn't need these boys to be head and shoulders above the rest. That was the thing.
There's also another guy, Johnny. I don't know what you think about. I'm sure you think he's obviously good and stuff, but I think Johnny Gray is reaching serious highs. So, like, what's the name of the Irish back row, Ryan? There's obviously Ryan and Itoje. Remember last year, all they spoke about was that who's going to start for the Lions? Is it going to be them two together? And Itoje might actually be captain of the Lions. I thought, yeah, fair enough. Obviously, the two of them are absolute machines, and they're really dynamic and very modern. The second rows who cover a lot of ground and workhorses. Okay. But I thought, bloody hell, Johnny Gray only won everything that there was to win last year. And I think his only problem is that he doesn't look like his brother. So he's not as big and not as impressive. But bloody hell does he shift a lot of work on the pitch.
He's always had that. And I think the difference we've got for Johnny is he's broadened his horizons by leaving Glasgow, and he's come down to Exeter, and he's played with Johnny Hill week in, week out, and he's gone up against the top English second rows and all the foreigners who come in, and he's realised, I'm as good
I got them.
I'm as good. I can graph for 80 minutes. I can do it all, and he's not a fancy second row who, like maybe some of the guys in World Rugby you could pick out might make a 20-meter break, or they might do some stuff. But he's the type of second row you want in your pack. He's gonna push hard in the scrum, and he's gonna smash rocks all day. And like, what more do you want from your second row?
Exactly.
And Jason, you mentioned Cam Redpath, and obviously Dave Cherry as well, first cap, winning the Calcutta Cup. Obviously that was at Twickenham, but you know what that feels like. You won the Calcutta Cup on your debut, didn't you?
I did, yes. That was like, golly gosh, how long ago was that? So back in 2000, I came in for my first cap. England they were coming up to Murrayfield to try and win the Six Nations. In Scotland, we were looking to win the wooden spoon, unfortunately. So
is that game with John Jeffries?
No, that's
no.
I play with you, Jace. I'm only messing. I know how old you are. I play with you, mate. Come on.
So you know what? That was like dream stuff for me. And I've got memories of that day. It was a classic it was a beautiful Scottish day where the rain was horizontal, and run out the tunnel at Murrayfield, the Highland Cathedral. And what I remember was, I've never been there, but I remember like the Super Bowl, there's like ticker tape come down off the top of the West Stand at Murrayfield, and just running out to the bagpipes and just thinking, right, this is like just what everything I've done for my whole life so far at 21 at that point. And the game scooshed by, and it felt like an absolute flash. And to beat England for the very first time, and then to go out into the night in Edinburgh, having beaten England, was that was pretty special.
And did Andy Nicol give you the trophy as well, or did you take it on the night out, or what happened?
We ended up in an old teammate's bar. There was the three. So Gregor had a bar, Derek Stark, an old player around Sheffield, had what's called the 3/4 bar down in the Grassmarket. We ended up in there, and one of my old flatmates was in there who was teetotal, and that night he was putting back like Hardy breezers and stuff, and like it was all. I got quite lucky because it was the tradition in the Scottish team for your first cap, everybody would buy you a drink, so they'd come up and they would have a water and they give you a vodka. They would have a ginger beer and you've got a whiskey. But everyone was just they were just so happy that I managed to sidestep the initiation and just managed to have a fun night without going too far, as I think quite often can happen on your first camp.
And Johnny, we mentioned your dad last week. Obviously, he was part of the last side, Scottish side, yep, to win at Twickenham. So have you spoken to him? Is he a bit gutted that he can't call himself the last Scottish player to win at Twickenham?
Not at all. They're absolutely delighted. So that whole generation, they've all been WhatsApping each other back and forth. Just saying, they're glad, genuinely glad that the monkey's off the back. Another one last year with going down to Wales and beating them for the first time in a long time in Cardiff. But it's hugely important for Scottish rugby. I think everyone recognises the importance of going down against old enemy and beating England at Twickenham. Look, it hadn't been done since '83, but they're delighted. The same as every Scottish player, every Scottish fan. It's a huge step and a big marker to lay down, and a monkey off the back. So no, they're all delighted, absolutely delighted for the team. Again, they couldn't stop talking about Hoggy and the gesture at the end, a marker of the man and how far he's come as a leader as well. No, they're over the moon, as is everybody, I think, within Scottish rugby.
Absolutely. And before we move on from Scotland, because we should talk about other things as well, Johnny, some other stuff has happened this weekend apart from Scotland beating England. Jason, you were captain, weren't you, when Johnny made his international debut? The big one, I think it was. Romania, was it, Johnny?
Big match in Romania.
So what are your memories of a young, fresh-faced Johnny Beattie?
A lot of excitement about Johnny coming, because Johnny he probably had, I don't know exactly, but he probably had the skill set of a back, and he was able to play in the forwards. So Johnny was like the guy coming in. I don't know where Cy Taylor was, Johnny, when he came in, but probably
just injured.
He'd been injured, yeah. So Simon, yep. You remember Tim and Benji? No, Benji, did you play with Simon up at?
In Stade Français.
So Simon came through the same age as me, and Simon was an amazing athlete, and I guess Johnny was probably coming through as somebody to put a little bit of pressure on Simon. And unfortunately, I got injured in the game against Romania, so I ended up getting a dodgy scrum, I think, and the scrum wheeled round, and I ended up overcompensating to defend against the scrum half, thinking he was going to be faster than he was, and he wasn't. He stepped back inside, and I caught my knee and ended up popping my ACL. So, but yeah, and you scored a try in that game as well, Johnny, didn't you? And
yep, in front of 11,500 spectators at Murrayfield.
Yeah, almost like COVID, wasn't it? That's...
Oh, changed days. But I remember. I've got really good memories of. Weirdly, Jace, one of the things that stands out most was actually that injury. It's the first time I'd ever seen somebody do an ACL. And it's one of those things that you never, ever see. And I looked up to you for so long. I remember I used to come watch Glasgow on a Friday night as a 14, 15, 16-year-old. And I remember seeing you walking down Byres Road in Glasgow in a sort of Glasgow Warriors tracksuit, and you seeing this man mountain. Like, for me, it was like the mountain from Game of Thrones, walking down Byres Road. That's what it was like seeing Jace at that time. And then I can remember from the day before the game, you slipped a little handwritten note underneath my door, just, wishing me all the best, start of a career. Really good to have you with us. And like, I was on cloud 9. I think I was 20 at the time, didn't know what was happening, but playing with essentially all of my heroes, people that I'd watched playing rugby for Scotland for years. And that for me was one of the biggest things that stood out with that game, was watching your injury, which is really, really strange. But it sort of almost brought the sport, or the stupidness of the sport, that something like that could happen to somebody so strong without being touched, purely from changing direction. It's the weirdest thing that it stuck with me. But seeing you and then trying to defend with you and then seeing you drop, and just seeing one of the strongest people I'd ever seen in my life have a knee click like that, I'll never, ever forget it. And yeah, I 100% remember the initiation after game. You hadn't forgotten about me. I don't think I've been as drunk since. After that game, I certainly got a drink with every single member of the squad. But looking at an amazing memory, and wonderful to do such a good group of people. It was great fun. Great
Man,
fun.
I think you're a little bit starstruck, Johnny. But to be honest,
Still
I've seen Jace do some pull-ups with 70 kgs of chains on him, but he couldn't squat for his life. So it's not so surprising. It's not so surprising if the one thing he's going to break is a knee. I'm telling you, those shoulders are not going anywhere. But those knees were definitely going to buckle at some point.
And obviously, you are a Scottish legend, Jason, but you're a little bit French as well. You finished your career in Clermont, and we mentioned your kids before. A couple of them are French, aren't they?
Yeah, two of them. So Annabelle was for my travels. So before I joined Clermont, I played I was in Sale for 6 years. So we had a good grounding with a lot of French players. So we had our coach was Philippe Saint-Andre.
Yeah,
he was an interesting chap. We had Chabal, we had Lionel Four, we had Daniel Larachea, Valentin Couron. So we had a lot of
Chabal.
Yes. We had
Bruno.
Yes.
Bruno.
Yeah. Well, we had So we had some really interesting French guys come over. So they were brilliant for us. And Philippe was really good. And in my last year, when I was trying to work out what I was going to do, we ended up we had Clermont in the Heineken Cup, and we actually went over and we beat Clermont at Stade Marcel Michelin, and what would that have been, 2007, 8? I think it would have been, or 8, 9. I think we beat them over there. So, and Philippe, who he was totally pumped for the game, because I think it must have been 9 or 10 years he'd played in Clermont, and he was
captain of Clermont.
Yeah, he was a bit of a legend there. I don't know if his relationship was soured, or he had a massive chip on his shoulder when he went over with Sale. He was so desperate to win. And I can remember how. Did Philippe coach you with France then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Philippe was brilliant. Like, he was brilliant. So we'd have, like, he couldn't remember people's names. So we had we had the two away. So we had Nacho, the second row, Ignacio.
Yeah, Fernandez Lobe, but the older brother.
Yeah.
The older brother, and we had Juan.
Yeah.
He would call Juan brother of Nacho. So he didn't even know his name. Like, the guy's, like, Juan was just a legend. He couldn't get his right name. And then the fitness guy, we had a guy called Nick Johnston, who was our head fitness S&C coach. We had a guy called Scott, and he would call him brother of Nick. So this guy had worked with us for 5 years. He didn't know his name.
Do you remember? Tell me if he did that with you guys, Jace. But in the French team, so in England, obviously, if you put 2 fingers to somebody, it's pretty harsh, right? Well, in France, if you put the middle finger, it's the equivalent. And for some people, when they talk, they use their fingers. Well, Philippe, for some whatever reason, had his third finger up all the time. It was just it was a habit of his or something. So he would throw the finger to everyone when he was speaking. So you couldn't actually concentrate on what he was saying. You would just giggle and laugh. And so imagine if you add this to, what brother of Juan, come around here, you'll play number 6 or something. It's hard to concentrate, right?
Philippe, when back in the day, before video analysis really came into it, we had a big, in Carrington where we trained at Sale, we had a big TV up on the screen, but it was just done on video recorder with a really big old school remote control, and he'd be smashing the controller against the TV. What is this? Brother of Nacho. And so I had a bit of an idea before I came out to Clermont about what it was going to be like through playing with the Frenchies. And I think at the same time, so Lionel came back to Clermont with me, and he'd played in Clermont before, I think.
Yeah, he started there from the academy almost.
Yeah, so he came through. Yeah, so out of the kids, so Annabelle was born in Stockport, and then Betty was born in up the hill. what's the name of that hotel up the hill?
Châtaigneraie.
And then
Yeah.
our third daughter May was the first water baby born in Clermont, just opposite the stadium. And then we managed to get one born back in here. So yeah, we had a great time, and Ben and I ended up being just about neighbors.
So Jace, as you guys can see, is pretty chilled and humble and stuff. But we all in this show, Jace, we always mention like who made it in France and why. You know, so there's always the example of Nick Benedon, who bought into the culture, got there, started speaking, was very much into, you know, buying into the new thing and stuff. And there's loads of different examples where guys were reluctant to change, reluctant to open themselves, reluctant to just learn about different cultures, different ways of doing things and stuff. And Jace has always been a very respectful dude and stuff. And so he just stuck to what he knows. You know, I'm just going to concentrate on being respectful, doing my stuff well, committing hard and going hard. But I'll tell you, Jason, you know this story because you always tell this story whenever I'm with you on a speaking gig or something. But the day that you earned the most respect out of the boys is when you broke your tibia. You didn't even scream. So the guy basically got sidestepped by Wesley Fofana, I think it was, or somebody fell on it. I can't remember what happened.
I was carrying the ball. So it was
okay.
1st of January 2010, and it started off. It should have been a game of, well, should have been touch, but Vern was our coach, so you can imagine that touch didn't last very long. So
it's touch, but you know, if you lose, you won't play.
It's touch smash.
Yeah, touch. Yeah, slash 110%. So I took the ball. I got a pass off Brock and got tackled by Wesley, and Alexandre Audebert, the back row, came up top and ended up a little bit similar how did Maceo, just a thing you've done 1,000 times. Ended up getting swiveled round, and my studs must have stuck, and unfortunately I had a spiral fracture in my tib, and I broke the fib as well. And I just remember going down on all fours, and a couple of guys come up and was like, oh no, it's knackered. And Vern comes up and he's like, go on, Jace, get up, come on. I was like, no, Vern, I'm pretty sure I've broken my leg, Vern. Get up, mate. And he's told this story back. He looked down at my sock and he could see the two bones were the bone on my tibia, which was a bit displaced, was like pushing through my sock. And he's like, yeah, mate, you've broken your leg, but just get off to the side and we can finish training. So,
no, mate, hang on. You got to add the sound to the story because basically he broke his freaking tibia. So like you said, it's pushing on the sock and the guy just went, patouché, c'est cassé. I would have been rolling over, screaming. I mean, they could hear me from, you know, all the way to London or something. He didn't even scream. And all the boys like, bloody hell, he's a tough nut, this one. Because he just, you know, basically broke his bones in a spiral way and didn't even make a noise, and basically got treated and stuff. But no, mate, I remember my first lunch when I went over, Benji, which was that thing about, right, I'm going to integrate, I'm going to do my best here. I'm out for lunch, and there was, go out with the forwards. So there was probably Mario Ledesma, Martin Scalzo, Thibaut, Lionel, and I was like, yeah, I'll come along for lunch. And the boy spoke so quick, I didn't understand or say one word for the hour that we had lunch. And I was just like I'm gonna have to concentrate, and slowly by slowly you learn 1 or 2, 3, 4 words in the sentence, and you can then put it together. And I think being respectful, I think was a big thing. I guess the way I was brought up, and trying and the bits that Benji, you'll know, and Johnnie is part of your lives, is just like shaking hands every morning. Like it's a pain in the bum sometimes, but it's a great way of acknowledging people. Like back in Scotland, you're lucky if you get a like a flick of the head or something. People just don't do it. And I think like those little things, I know Vern tried to do it with the Scotland squad when he came back in, and those little bits and pieces of yeah, but mate, instead of complaining about it, you just understood that was part of the environment. You understood that was part of the new rules. It wasn't up to you to try to change people. So you were like, listen, whoever I am, whatever I've done in the past, I'm just going to try actually learn from others. Okay, if that's what they do, then you did the same way that you played 6 at international level many times. And then you ended up playing in the second row, never complaining once about it, and just doing your hard graft and just getting stuck with it. You know, that's your attitude. And that's the reason why it's another example of Nick Bendenon, somebody who speaks a lot, who did really well by being expressive. Jason is not the most expressive guy, but he also took it the right way. It was all about respect, hard work, and then that got you that status of basically being your passage at Clermont was an absolute success, and you left definitely a fantastic image.
That's the way, isn't it? Yeah. As a forward, how do you? And that's when I left Glasgow. I had a great time in Glasgow. I left to go to the Premiership with Sale to try and test myself and to try and do a little bit. And it was a similar thing. I'm clearly a relatively quiet guy, and you lead by example, by good work ethic and everything like that. And it was the same thing, possibly similar to Johnnie Gray. Test yourself in the Premiership, do well. And it was the same. I wanted to come over to Clermont and see what the challenges the top 14 had, and the way that you get in, and the way how do you get picked in a team, which was the first challenge, was prove your worth to the coach. And I think for me, Vern was very much similar to, he was like a modern day Jim Telfer. And Johnnie, you're probably just missed out on Jim Telfer, but your dad would have. Like Jim Telfer was, he was like the old school Vern. Like Vern was a modern version of Jim Telfer. And like Jim Telfer would have I remember doing rucking sessions. He'd have like a big 2x4, like this massive bit of wood. And if you weren't getting low enough in the rucking, he'd be like whacking you on the back and stuff for under the rucking net. And he was a coach who, a little bit similar to Vern, is like you worked hard for him, and that was a great fit for some players, and not for everybody. But for me, I was the type of guy who would, Vern would call me, "You're a bloody good soldier, Jace. You're a good soldier." And I would do my bit for the team.
And we've spoken about Vern quite a bit on here before with previous guests. He obviously is a guy who divides opinion, but clearly it seems like you fitted quite well into his culture and what he wanted. Apart from a complete lack of sympathy when you break your leg, did you get on well with him? You had a good relationship with Vern?
He was a man of few words, Vern, and he would. Like I remember once he tried to probably prod me like psychologically about saying my turnovers weren't quite as good as other backdoors. And it was like, so I went and had a chat with the video analyst called Steph. And I was like, Steph, like we were getting into video and I was like, what's the numbers here? What's the breakdown on turnovers on the backdoors to me? And he's like, well, you make all the first time tackles, which allows, it was guys like Alex Lafondre was just coming through, or Elvis, or Alexandre Audebert, or Jubon, those guys, they would latch on first. So in retrospect, my turnovers were being created by having a strong first tackle, which possibly created the turnover or allowed the second guy to latch on quickly and get it. But Vern, I think, quickly realised after that I was the type of guy that he didn't need to prod me, or because I was experienced enough when I came to Clermont. I knew how to prepare myself and how to play well. He was good, you know. Like Vern was, he was for me. He was the modern day Jim Telfer, and he liked his. Like I've got some great memories of. It was probably one of the international breaks. I don't know if you were there, Benji, but going for like a massive hike in the snow with snow boots on, walking for like 4 hours up to this like auberge in the middle of what felt like the middle of nowhere. I'd eaten this massive Côte de Boeuf, supping on a couple of bottles of red wine, and then coming back down onto the bus and stuff. And it doesn't fit for everybody, but you know, I really enjoyed my time under Vern, and he liked the camps. I remember in the very last season, where I was coming back from when I'd broken my leg and my hamstring was a little bit dodgy. I went away on this pre-season camp, and this was really me. I had to prove myself that I was going to be okay. And we did this. What did we do? We couldn't, like, really hot in the summer, this French pre-season. We canoed down the thing. We did a load of climbing. We had some lunch. Then the afternoon's activity was, I think it was a 30k
running bike.
Return to base camp, and you were putting threes, and you're crossing your fingers that you've got.
I was with you. Mate.
That's what I was going to say. You cross your fingers. You got somebody really fit. I got Benji.
Well, you got Benji,
and then you got me. Oh. No, but hang on. Wait for the rest of the story. So you got in threes, and if I remember rightly, Ben, so it was two of you running at once and one of you cycling. And you started off at the bottom of this hill. Oh my word, that's such a funny story. I'm glad that you're bringing it up. Nice. Two bikes, three guys. So one runs, two's on the bike, and then just swap whenever you want. But all three of you needs to finish the 30k, roughly.
So we go up the top of this hill, and our third person, Noah Nakatase, after 400 meters, falls off his bike into the ditch. then comes up and we try and get him running, and he then turns out he didn't learn how to ride a bike back in Fiji.
No, man, mate.
Of course he did.
So Jace wants to lead by example. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna start running, and it's up a hill like this. You know, it's a long one. And I'm there cycling next to him, and then I hear, bah! Noah just falls over. He's like, what are you doing now? No, don't worry. I'll catch up. All right, fine. So me and Jace keep on going. You know, we start for the first couple of 100 meters, and then we're like, where's Noah? Because obviously if I swap with him and me and Jace are swapping, and then we can't do anything. And then there's the guy who comes out. So by the way, you know Noah Nakatasi? Like, yeah, that's our teammate. Yeah, he doesn't know how to ride a bike. He fell in the ditch over there and he quit. He quit after 200 meters. So I blew it. So all right, fine. So we've got another 25 or 27K to do just between me and Jace with one bike. And then we keep on going. And then I don't know if you remember, Jace, but you and I got split up because you went to save somebody. You went to save Swanpool or whoever it was.
Ryan Swanepoel,
Ryan Swanpool, a Sharks number 10, 12, who came as medical joker to Clermont. And he had like a cramp or something. And he was on his back, started cramping and fell in the ditch also. But he could have really hurt himself, to be honest, because it was quite steep. And Jace was with the bike and stops. I'm going to help him, whatever. I never found Jace again. I had 15K to do on my own. I'm telling you, that was a long.
I remember.
I can't say go as a run because I would be lying. It was a long power walk.
You were following signs on they put arrows on the ground, and I ended up missing one. And I think I was the last person into camp. And there's Vern waiting as I came in. Oh, where have you been, old man? I was like, oh, good to see you, BC.
Oh man, yeah. No one I got to see not knowing how to do. I mean,
ride a bike. So he said.
We should have a show just on Fijians because 5 or 6 years later, I did the same exercise with Clermont. And PC Liato chucked his trainers off. He said, I can't run with trainers. They hurt my feet. So he wanted to do 30 Ks of running and cycling barefooted. And I'm like, that's not going to work. He ended up splitting his feet open. Like to the point he needed stitches on his feet, and obviously he didn't fit in the run bike. I think he's like, I'd rather have stitches on my feet than have to do 30 Ks of cycling running. So he found the easy escape.
And speaking of coaches, obviously bringing it back to the current Six Nations, you'll have played against Fabien Galtier. So have you got any kind of memories of playing against him, and what do you make of the job he's doing at the moment with France?
I remember, I think Fabien was number 9 when we played France in the quarterfinal of the World Cup in Australia in 2003, where we lost pretty heavily. I think that was probably 40 points to 10. Yeah, he was good. You know, he was clearly a good tactician. He's doing a great job with France. And, you know, I listened to you guys' podcasts and all the sort of analysis you've done of him. He doesn't sound like a fantastic man-manager of a club team, but I tell you what, he's got a good group of coaches, and he's got a really good crop of players in that French team at the moment, and they're the form team at the minute, and building towards the World Cup. If they can keep everybody fit, then they're going to cause problems.
I don't want to jump the gun, Jace, but obviously last time Scotland won a tournament of this nature was 1999, and the deciding game was in Paris. This year Scotland have got France in Paris, I think in the 3rd round. How do you see that going?
I think momentum is absolutely key in the Six Nations. I think for so many years, Scotland have always lost the first game, and it's always been a little bit chase up. That second game then becomes really pressurised. And you then, Scotland, we've been chasing like the wooden spoon at the end, like what can we salvage? So what an amazing start for us to get England at Twickenham. If it goes in the scenario that we beat Wales this Saturday, which if we perform well enough, we're definitely good enough, then by all means, we're good enough to take on France. Who do France have this Saturday?
Ireland away.
So
yes, I mean everybody was saying that round 4 was going to be England France the decider. So now clearly the big upset of Scotland has changed this. To be honest, it's easy to say this because you go weekend after weekend, okay. But obviously this weekend, just like you said, is a big decider. I think Scotland has to beat Wales, considering the only reason that Wales beat Ireland, without being disrespectful at all, because you could see Ireland coming back and stuff, and that they were just physically, they were out conditioned basically towards the end of the game because they were 14 men down for 16 minutes. It was just too long. And I really do think it's just like you said, if everybody's fit with Scotland, that's my only issue with Scotland. You drop Hamish Watson, you can't replace him. You drop Johnny Gray, you can't replace him. You drop obviously Hogg, you can't replace him. Finn Russell, don't even get me started. So that's my only issue with Scotland. What scares me, they need to have everything going together. That's what you're saying, Jace. You need momentum. So you need to win Wales, but without not so much using too much sort of battery, because you have a week to recover. But please do not injure or suspend anyone, because otherwise you'll be in big trouble. But definitely round 3, that France-Scotland game is going to be worth.
And we've benefited from Lackey Prowse, and I think we broke that voodoo down in Wales. It was so much easier to play down in Stradey Park. Whether it's psychological, well, it is psychological to go down to Twickenham and not have 80,000 people there, where 78,000 are going against you. There's a little bit less pressure there, and I think whether that is as relevant in Paris, but it's now given the Scotland team the confidence just to kick on, and they will now believe that we can go to Paris. And the fact that we've got Finn in France doing so well, we've got the boys playing in different leagues with confidence that if we get parity in the forwards, if we can get some dominance in the forwards, then it's what's game on.
So if you have to put your mortgage on it, then Jason, who's winning this tournament? Is it Scotland? Is it France? Or is it someone else?
Yeah, I'm not quite clued up enough to be full-on staff with all the breakdown in games, but I think, yeah, Scotland's we're in it now. I think we're definitely in the hunt, but it's game by game. And you know what? I'm the eternal optimistic Scotsman. For the last however many years, like, this could be our year. This could be it. So I'm not going to change it. It's going to be our year, and we'll see what happens.
Well, fingers crossed. And thanks ever so much for joining us, Jason. Great to get your insight on Clermont, on France, on Scotland, on everything in between. And good luck to all the Scots for the rest of the tournament.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Jace.
Cheers, Jace.
Cheers,
Legend. Obviously, I'm completely biased because he's my mate, but I am a huge fan of Jason White. I think he's absolute class. I think he's an absolute stand-up guy. You hang out an hour with him, you feel wiser. You feel like you're a better person. Honestly, that's really the way that he makes me feel. So he touched it. He's got 4 girls, and this guy, he got a fantastic family of 4 little girls who are absolutely brilliant. And, like, you know, it's just like happiness about life. And I think he's got his priorities well sorted. Incredibly humble. Like, you have to reach out down his throat to get it out, huh? Otherwise you'll never get anything. But he chopped people in half for a living. He was by a mile for a couple of seasons, like Johnnie sort of hinted to it, the best Scottish player, because bloody hell he was respected. No disrespect, but to the Scots, but he was the only one who could stand up to the Safas. He was the only one who had the physicality to stand up to anyone, anytime. That's why he could travel. And at the end in Clermont, he had the humility to basically finish in the second row. Bloody hell, he did a good job. He just, he's just a hard grafter that never complained and just kept on going. And you're like, fair play. That's just what the impression that he gave you. But no, he's incredible CV, incredible career, great bloke.
He's an absolute monster. I think people forget how much of a monster he was.
Yeah.
He's one of the few Scottish people, especially like before the crop of Johnnie Grays and Finns and Hoggies going abroad. He's one of the few Scots of that era that actually cracked it, but properly cracked it abroad. He was one of the few Scots boys that was physically able to dominate.
Won the Premiership. See, when he spoke about it, he didn't even mention that they won the Premiership.
And he was player of the
probably
year.
One of the best players of the Premiership.
He was player of the year.
Season.
He won player of the season in the Premiership.
Did he win it?
Yeah.
Mate, see, so that's what I'm talking about.
But he wouldn't bring that up.
Even, yeah,
exactly.
I would. Mate, I would have it behind me on my wall. I would have it there. Like, what, did you see it? Did you not see it?
But that's it. He genuinely was one of the few guys that broke the mold and did it properly. For me, like, I absolute hero worship. Like, I used to walk along. I could walk from my house to Glasgow's ground as a kid. And he was one of the few, he was head and shoulders above the rest, just physically dominated everything. And a lovely bloke. For me, he was my captain for Scotland caps, but with his injury, again, you touched on his broken tibia. He also popped that ACL. So I heard it pop next to me. He was a meter from me. He just limped off the pitch. Didn't even wince. Just
Mate, tell us more. Johnny, tell me more, please, about that
pitch.
note that he left. I think that's very, very cute.
Really
well,
cool.
Cute, sorry, very touching, you know.
It was, and also non-expected. So the night we all had obviously our last dinner before it was Scotland-Romania was my first cap, and we had the last dinner, a meeting before bed. Everyone goes back to their bed, and it must have been about 10:30. So he must have written something in his room. Then on his way back to on to retire for the night, he sort of slipped a note under my bed, and I just sort of heard the shh and paper sliding under, and turned it over, and it was a handwritten note from Jace. And there's weird things in rugby that you remember crowds, you remember teammates, and there's certain memories of receiving gifts that are unexpected or something like that, motivations or just things that aren't expected at all. But that was a handwritten note from my captain, Jason White, a guy that I looked up to for the past 5, 6, 7 years, idolized him when he played for Glasgow and Scotland. And he was just, very simple. Again, you touched how he makes you feel as a bloke. Everything with Jason is really simple, straightforward, calm. And it was the exact same type of message in that note. It was just, look, delighted to have you with us. Very excited you're part of the team. Enjoy tomorrow, enjoy the day. It's a big day for you and your family, and have fun. Something really simple like that. But just, to get a handwritten note the night before your first cap from a captain and a guy that you loved so much was really, really cool. Almost a regret not to have spent more time with him, because he was my captain. He was out then with that ACL injury. He then went abroad, obviously, and I think finished with Scotland, but didn't really get to be teammates for very long. It was quite flitting, but an absolute legend. Pleasure to be around, and one of rugby's real good guys. And like you said, one of the few Scots that's actually genuinely cracked it in every league at every level. An absolute machine.
That's an absolutely lovely story. Did I ever tell you one of my first professional games? No. I think it wasn't the first. I think it was like the second or whatever. And I was rooming with Augustin Pichot, who was a real mentor of mine, a lovely, lovely bloke. I really got along well with him. I would have, jumped off of a roof for him. And we're there, and he's the captain of Pumas, and he's got 7 phones that are constantly ringing, and he's a businessman, and he's on this and yelling at somebody in English and speaking Spanish and speaking Italian, Portuguese, whatever. And I'm there, just like waiting. Obviously, I'm not going to, for every single rugby player or professional sportsman who shared a room, that if the youngster, you're not touching the lights, right? The lights will stay on as long as the old fella will decide that they're on. So I'm there and I'm ready to sleep. Well, obviously I was shitting myself before that game, but I was sort of hanging like this. And at one point he just turns around, bunk beds are sort of next to each other and the light is in the middle. He turns around and I'm there already tucked up, whatever, waiting. He's like, Benji. So yeah, are you scared? I was like, yeah, thanks for asking, Gus, because yeah, a little bit. Well, good, because you're shit. And he switched the lights off. And I'm there in my bed. I think you can hear my teeth basically whacking against each other. And actually, to be honest, the next day he woke up, he was pissing himself.
Oh, mate. He
went to breakfast before me or after me. I can't remember. Then he gave me a big hug. He was only joking. But to be honest, once I've laughed it out, all my anxiety before the game sort of left me. You know what I mean? So he played a trick on me to try to help me. But I always remember this story that you scared, yeah, good, because you're shit. And you switch it off. Oh, the shock, mate. The shock.
Brilliant. Great to have Jason on. And clearly, you both made a good impression on him as well. I mean, can we get someone on who's got a bit of dirt on you? Because Benji, you were the best neighbour since sliced bread, and Johnnie, some sort of forward-back hybrid. So, I mean, high praise indeed.
You can try, mate. You can try. You won't find one. All right. When you're good, you're good. What do you want me to say? When you're a nice fella, you're nice fella.
Hey, man. And we spoke a bit about France there. We spoke a lot about Scotland. But we should talk in more detail about France's win at the weekend. It was a bit of a hammering. But Italy, fewest caps of any team in the tournament since 1992. And it did look like men against boys, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think also we had the conversation, should there be relegation, should there not be? Like, I think, Benji, you keep saying, look, there's going to be a change in the landscape. Something's going to give. Interestingly, Sam Warburton's comments, I'm not sure if you saw those past couple of days.
Yeah.
I mean, he's right. Like, I know Italy at the start of a rebuild, but, when Italy had Parise, Massi, Castrogi, like when they offered a decent squad, right now they're not offering anything at all. And they're really, really battling. It looked like it could have been top 14 against Nacional or Federal 3. That was, the gulf was absolutely enormous. And yes, France were wonderful, but Italy really, really, I mean, something is going to have to change eventually. And if it is that glass ceiling is removed, it might be positive.
It was almost embarrassing because they did actually not dominate, but fight pretty hard in terms of ball possession. They put France under quite a lot of pressure in the first half, but never into enough pressure to actually seriously challenge them. And then France just had to, you switch to third gear, you score a try. And they never really had to push really hard. So I think, and France, and in France, basically, we were stupid enough and narrow-minded enough to actually try to say, do they play enough expansive rugby? Galtier is only basing basically on his strategy on turnovers and Antoine Dupont and all that, which I think is not true. But let's just say, if we have to address the couple of things that you need to take out from that game, is that I actually don't know how good Antoine Dupont can be, because he's good every single week now. He's just a freak of nature. And he's doing my head in, because I am almost turning into a paparazzi. I want him to drop at some point, because he's extra human. Mate, he is extra human at the moment. And he didn't ever have a particularly good game, but it just looks too easy. Bloody hell. He is the best support line runner in the world. I'll tell you that. You have a look at every single break there is. I don't think I've ever seen a 9 always been there. He's like, do you remember this back row from the All Blacks? You know him, Johnny Beattie, Josh Kronfeld.
Yeah,
remember him with the? He was a legend. He played in Leicester for a couple of seasons, and the boys were saying, just look, what he does really well is that he steals the ball off the ground and then he hits support line. And apparently he told all the Leicester Tigers boys, he's like, well, when you got John Alomo, you just trail him. I didn't look at any play. I just trailed John Alomo, and he was always there. And I think he scored about 20 tries for the All Blacks, just getting up, one last offload up, and then I'll score. And Antoine Dupont, he creates and stuff, but bloody hell, he trails incredibly well. He's constantly there. He's constantly supportive, and he's just incredible. So my number one is Jalibert. Antoine Dupont. How bloody hell good can he be? And how consistent is he? It's just absolutely impressive. Secondly, Teddy Thomas, you know how much I hate him in defense and stuff, but he is just absolutely electric in attack. Man, he is extraordinary. And he sets up a first try. He just gets off from 6 Italian players. And I know it's not extraordinary Italian defense, but still, he's got outstandingly electric pace. Like I said to you guys, they talk about, was it Louis something Zamet, the guy from Gloucester, the Welsh winger?
Louis Zamet, yep.
Mate, he's got a Zamet in each leg. Honestly,
in his pocket.
I reckon he could have been a track runner. Like, I really reckon he works a little bit. He can go under 11 seconds at 100 meters. No problem. He's just freakishly quick. So that's my second take. Jalibert did well. I was pleased that he was there and the boys were there. But the main take from this game, and the main difference is that France have gone from the underdogs disappointing for the last 12 years to serious challengers and actually potentially winners of the Six Nations. And they went from that status, which they had to learn, to address, and to understand and to cope with that pressure that comes with it, or that expectation that comes with it. And they had to do that in Italy, which, no disrespect, doesn't show itself as a massive threat, and without a crowd. So to make it an even duller, weirder sort of experience, whilst they were for 2 weeks in Nice in isolation, where the press was saying every day, the Six Nations might not happen. So you're training really hard, but it might not happen. It might not play. And irrespective of that, they win 50-10 the first game. So whatever the content of the game, whatever the actual guys that were on the pitch, whatever, who did what, I don't care. All I care about is we're finally, hallelujah, finding consistency and sustainability in the performance. And that is absolutely extraordinary. And honestly, I can't stress this enough. It's not about talent, but in their minds, those boys are really, really scoring high points in my book, because that's typically what's been lacking of us. We've constantly been doing up and downs and stuff, and they're just reliable now. And that's the main thing that I take from this, and that's what gives me the most pleasure, and especially the most positive vibes about the future, because they will need to be consistent, reliable, sustainable in performance and all that, and they will be challenged every weekend. So that I was just clearly for that.
So I think I completely agree with everything you said. I think it's because they're now clearly organized on both sides of the ball, whereas they haven't been before. France have always had talented players forever, but they have not been organized properly. You look now, you talk about turnovers, playing off turnover, but when France are organized properly in defense, the pressure they put on 10, 12, 13 with a quick press and rush, they snuffed out anything that Italy could offer. They couldn't get to at edge once and do anything. And when they did, they got turned over, and then the ball gets popped out to Vincent or Teddy Thomas, and you're halfway down the pitch. Look, I think defensively, and Jace touched on it as well, we've spoken about it before in the podcast, the work off the ball, the kick chase, the boring stuff, the absolute meat and drink that every other team does, France now does exceptionally well. And weirdly, one of the guys, like we talked, like everyone has messaged and talked about, you know, Antoine Dupont's offload and how ridiculous and what flair. But if you look back and you analyze how it came, it's from his defensive graft. So look, they're organized now off the ball. Defensively, they're great. We've seen pressure on an Italian 10, 12, 13 that absolutely crumbled, had no solutions. I think that showed the gulf in class. France have now got a benchmark in terms of their playing ability, but in terms of rugby IQ and nous and how to defend properly, they can control teams, they can shackle teams, which previously they couldn't do. France might lose the ball, and a team like a Wales or an Ireland who can hold ball well would grind them down, create opportunities. And now I think that's going to happen much less often. Again, the man you mentioned, Antoine Dupont. So first try, the ball gets threaded through off the maul breakout, off the back of a maul. They've obviously clearly analysed that Italy don't have anybody in the second line of defence in that position of the field. Really well executed, try. In the past, that would have been a maul breakout, hit a 12, go around a corner, probably lose a ball after 4 phases. But it's clearly thought out, it's concise, and they've got players that can execute these things and finish. So the first thread through for Fickou, well done. I mean, like, hats off, but that's good analysis. They've worked hard off the pitch as a coaching team and as players to identify these things and execute. Second try, you talked about it, the track, inside line Teddy Thomas. He does it every single week. Another one, it's almost getting tiresome to see it on replay. But the one that got me was on 30 minutes. So I'm not sure, people will just see the kick through, the take from Vincent, the pass from Villiers, and the offload. And we'll see that image on repeat now for years, because it's one of the pieces of skill that we've seen in the Six Nations tournament, that offload from Antoine Dupont. But what people didn't see, if you go back to the start of that clip, is it's him that forces the turnover. Italy actually have a 4-on-2 or a 5-on-2 out wide. Yeah. Antoine manages to rush. He blitzes up spot D, spot check somebody, defensive tackle, offensive tackle, dominates somebody, hits him behind the gain line, stops the Italian attack. Italian attack then has to go infield again. They lose control of the ball, loose ball, turnover, Antoine hacks it down the field, chaos ensues. So look, yes, he is now a world-class runner with the ball, but he's also defensively in the middle of the field, which we don't usually see. We have done from Sean Edwards in the past on his sides, but there are other things that he's adding in different levels to his play that this French team are benefiting from. And you mentioned a bit earlier, Benji, about injuries and looking after people. I was so glad that they got him off 55 minutes. Just get him in cotton wool, wrap him up, and look forward to see what we can do next week.
It's the one thing, Johnny. The world, maybe I'm biased, but World Rugby is absolutely delighted to see a performing French team. World Rugby is delighted to see Antoine Dupont back, because we just bring this excitement, this joy, this specialness about them. Don't get me wrong. Nobody's going to give us the World Cup in 2023. Everybody's going to try to shoot us down. But to be honest, you know how there's this emotional attachment to French, because we do things differently, because we perform a different type of rugby, because we come across an Antoine Dupont who's a bit, may he rest in peace, Christophe Dominici, the tiny little guy, you know, who will just run over mountains and make you think that nothing's impossible and all that. And on top of that, what I really like, because you touched on it, is that Jalibert break gives to Antoine Dupont support and he gives it to Teddy Thomas. He can score that try 150 times.
Yeah, but they're a team now.
He can score it on his own, no problem. And he still shifts the ball. So I always portrayed him as somebody who's quite selfish, but he's so selfish because he was so good. You know, so when you're good, you try your best to the absolute point. And there I can actually see that he's shifting into this organizer, this, you know, exactly like you said, instead of trying for myself to break out from that driving maul, kick it over, obviously it was strategy, but still you have to apply it, shift it to Teddy Thomas for his score and all that. And then to come off at the 60th minute and you've done the job. Now listen, I'm crossing everything that I've got, but every week I believe a little bit more that finally we're building some sort of reliability, you know, that we can actually, we know where we're going. And that is something that is the biggest surprise or change, a flip around from the last 10 years, is that we actually we will get beaten by better. We will lose some games, but at least we seem to be, I'm going to jinx us, but we seem to be able to prevent some massive, ginormous upsets like we used to.
Just briefly, before we look ahead to round 2, we couldn't legislate for a red card after 12 minutes, but we didn't predict the Wales-Ireland result, did we?
No, but it was laboured. Like I think if that red card doesn't happen, Ireland win that game. They dominated largely parts of that game They dominated serious segments of that game with 14 men. And look, I've said it before. I think the Wales look a little bit turgid, unimaginative, a little bit lost. And you think, Benji, like normally any team at that kind of level, 14 minutes, you take a red card in a back row, you think, right, well, shit's going to hit the fan.
Johnny, tell me what you think, because I'm actually surprised that nobody sort of spoke about it. So what's his name? Thomas Francis, right? The tight end for Exeter, who obviously gets hit in the head by the shoulder of Peter O'Mahony.
Yeah.
And if you press pause, I don't think there's much that you can say about it. It's an unfortunate, accidental, but it's the new red cards that rugby needs to see happening. But what is it? 2 or 3 minutes before, there's the same clear out, but not from Peter O'Mahony. I think it's from either Byrne, the second row, or Van der Vlier, the number 7. I can't remember. On the same player, on Thomas Francis. And it's true that, and you hear Wayne Barnes say, it's accidental. It's a simple clear out. He can't play. He can't do anything about it. And he keeps on going. So I wonder if that didn't impact Wayne Barnes' decision.
So I missed the first one, but then the second one clearly was brought in by the TMO. But I heard it live in commentary as well. You know, it's just a clear out play on. I was thinking, are you joking? Like seeing it live, I was like, he's gone 100% straight away. But then thankfully we have a TMO now that is in place to stop the game and make that decision. But no, I completely missed the first one. I didn't even see it.
Well, let's get your predictions in for round 2 this weekend now. And we've joined forces with the Guinness Pint Predictor on Match Pint, haven't we? So anyone listening can join in and compete against you guys. It's really simple. You just download the Match Pint app, predict the scores, beat your mates, beat Johnnie, beat Benji, and win a whole host of great rugby prizes. And to compete against Johnnie and Benji, all you need to do is enter our league with the league code LARUGBY, LARUGBY. Johnnie is beating you, Benji, at the moment. He picked Scotland to win. Of course he did.
He did. I was too much of a pussy, basically, to put England by 1 point, 2 points. I think I did that. I really saw the Scots causing a lot of upset, but I just didn't see them taking it over the line. And fair play, Johnny. I mean, I think you predicted this pretty well.
So this week then, England-Italy. Scoreline? All
right, England-Italy, I think, unfortunately, it's going to be redemption week, and it could be a long day and long afternoon for Italy. So I reckon not even 50-10, but I reckon 60-10 to England. So 55.
60?
Yeah. 60-10. No, I reckon they're gonna. I reckon it's gonna be a big game. But so I reckon 60-10 England-Italy. Then obviously there's Ireland-France. There's Scotland-Wales first. Scotland-Wales, I will say a small win for Scotland. They will be challenged by Wales, who can produce some decent rugby, who can basically. They still have some incredible players. They have George North, they have Tipuric, they have Alwyn Jones, they have, some fantastic players. But I agree with Johnny. Without the red card from Ireland, I don't think they would have contained the comeback from Ireland at the weekend. So I see Scotland as favourites. I see them, like Jason White said, being in a positive vibe, positive dynamic, and I see them winning that game. I see them winning 25-12 against Wales. And for the last game, Ireland-France, to be honest, Ireland is not an opponent that fits France well at all. Because if they want to, they can hide the ball for 79 minutes and 30 seconds. They can play very tactical, a lot of strategy, a lot of kicking game. We want ball in play. We want counterattacks. We want loose balls. We want loose possession, basically, for France to be able to fully showcase their talent. But I see France winning in Ireland by 25-12.
Right, Benji. So I reckon Wales right now, for me, are the exact opposite of France in that we've talked how France have got the coaching staff now, and they're packed full of quality with their players. I think that Wales still have players that are quality. Look, British Lions, people that have worked with Gatlin in the past. You've got North, Tipperick, Alan Wynne-Jones. Wynne-Jones, again, was exceptional at the weekend. But I just think as a team and how they function, they're not what they were. Even stuff like their nuts and bolts, like their line-out was absolutely shocking, like taken to pieces against Ireland. I just don't see them having the platform, and I don't see them being as dangerous as they once were with ball in hand. Like Scotland coming off that win at Twickenham, will be confident, will be pumped up. And I don't want to say it, but I actually do see it for the first time in a long time being relatively comfortable for Scotland. I'm not sure if that's the final kiss of death, but I'm going to go Scotland 25, Wales 16. England, Italy, look, I completely agree. Redemption. Italy, I worry for them. That being said, there's still boys to come back in. I see that Mako Vunipola has been drafted back in. Sinclair's been drafted back in, but these guys haven't had much. Like I know Mako's had pretty much no game time, so he will not be up to speed either. So I don't see it being 60 points. I could see it being something like 45, because they're still not going to be firing. And I'm not sure if they're going to tweak what they're doing with their game. But even when they beat Italy away last year, with the strategy that they employ, it's never going to be that high scoring. But look, there's just such a margin of difference in quality. I'm going to go 45-12 for England. And that last game, I actually disagree with you. I don't see Ireland the same way. I don't think they are the proposition that they were under Joe Schmidt. I don't think they control ball. I don't think they're as much as potent as they were. I think they've got some incredible guys. Like I thought Taj Byrne was phenomenal in the second row. He's an absolute menace, but I genuinely believe that France have got enough, especially with there not being a crowd over there, to do a job. I think that France are going to take this one 13 points to 24. And I think it's going to be an absolute cracker.
So you do agree with me then, huh? Because I said that France
similar scoreline.
What was your
I
final
said
score?
25-12, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've just stolen your scoreline. Yeah, we agree 100%. 24-13.
You said 30 to 24. Is that what you said?
13 to 24. 13 for Ireland, 24 for France.
Oh yeah, so I said 25-12, I think.
Okay.
Similar. We broadly agree.
100%. They've got the quality to do it, 100%. And I think that Ireland are not what they were.
And just a very quick line on the top 14 before we go. Not too many surprises in terms of results, but did anything catch your eye? I'm assuming Clermont caught your eye, Benji, but Montpellier finally winning a game after 9 straight defeats.
Hang on. Before you speak about Montpellier, just listen. Chuffed to see Clermont performing really well. A tough game, a lot of intensity, some hard graft, and Clermont beat Lyon in a comfortably. And just as a little side note, it was the last game of Sitaliki Timani. So the massive lock, Tongan origin, 25 caps for the Wallabies or something, who went to Montpellier, I think played with Johnnie, and then signed in France and signed in Clermont, and played a couple of seasons. I was lucky enough to play with him. An absolute unit of a fella, but the kindest, gentlest giant I've ever met. Really hardworking, really kind. Doesn't drink, doesn't go out, that type of guy, but who will never make you feel awkward about it. Just kind and constantly taking care of others. Really good family. And for personal reasons, to take care of his family, he has to go back home. And so the club announced that they released him, and they signed Thomas Lavanini from Leicester Tigers. So it's not too bad in terms of replacement. But an absolute legend, Big Licky, like everybody called him, who just gave his body and his soul for this club. And I just wanted to give him a big shout out, because he was a legend. He was always the type of guy. He would never pour you out to him. But a couple of times he would just grab me and be like, I'm with you. And when a guy as big as him says that to you, and he means it, because he would never say anything particularly, you're like, bloody hell, I can, there's nothing's impossible for me. So a huge farewell, and the boys were chuffed. They were gutted that the fans were not there, to wish him well. He was there in 2017. He came back from an 8 or 9 week knee injury in about 3.5 weeks to play a top 14 final. Didn't say anything, kept on going, but knocked himself out after 30 minutes. But he's always committed to the team and stuff, and just an absolutely fantastic big fella who did well, and we wish him all the absolute very best.
Absolutely, they're with you too. And he was, like you said, an absolute gentle giant. Big family guy as well, had his kids over here as well. Lovely bloke. Good memories from Montpellier. But what I loved from the Clermont boys, and it's not something that you see often in rugby now, but the fact that he went off the pitch in his last game on everyone's shoulders. And I really enjoyed that. It's not, an end of a season winning a trophy or a top 14 or a Brennus, but I think it just showed how highly regarded he was, like firstly by us in Montpellier in his first contract, but how loved he was by the Clermont boys. So no, he wish him all the best and his family because they're absolutely lovely. And speaking of his former club, Montpellier, another important win for them. I say another important win. There haven't been too many. Might be something to do with
the
Philippe Saint-Andre.
Important win. Come on, you be happier with that. Just let a smile go.
Well, the thing is as well, mate, it was with a bonus point. Like, to the performances they've had, to then get that win with the bonus point, you saw the relief on Benoit Payog's face at the end, like looking up at the sky, just desperate. So happy, relief. Still not that much light between them and Bayonne. So that's Montpellier played 16 games, they're up to 27 points. Bayonne second bottom in that red zone on 14 games and 22 points, but a huge win for Montpellier because it's been a few weeks now they've been seriously in the dark.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Benji. And thanks to all of you guys for listening as well. Make sure you hit subscribe, leave us a nice review, and we will be back with another episode next week. Au revoir, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Au revoir.